The Bike Race. Text by Adele Broadbent. Illustrations by Pat Ludlow. Ollie would love to win the school bike race. The trouble is, Cooper Tully always wins everything and won't let anyone forget it. The Bike Race. Text by Adele Broadbent. Illustrations by Pat Ludlow. Chapter 1. Tiffin School Bike Race. Win a video game console in the Tiffin School Bike Race. Ollie read off the poster on the school notice board. Cool. Awesome, chorused the kids behind him. Starting line, Freshway Supermarket car park. Finish line, Tiffin School. That's about 15 kilometres, someone blurted out. No, it's not, said Ollie. It says it's 5 kilometres. More kids joined the group, eager to see what everyone was looking at. Ollie turned to his friend Luke. Think one of us can win that? We could share the prize. A week at my place, then a day at yours, he teased with a grin. It'll be great. Luke shrugged. Nah. He turned away and squeezed through the kids behind them. Ollie stared after him for a moment, then followed. By the time he had pushed his way through, he had to run to catch up. Hey Luke, what's up? I thought you'd be really into that. You got that cool bike for your birthday. You'll beat everyone on that. Luke spun around, his eyes blazing. I said no. Just forget it, okay? He turned and ran, bumping into others along the hallway, and disappeared outside. Ollie stood stunned, not sure whether to follow. Before he could decide, the bell shrilled down the hallway and everyone scattered. He couldn't help racing over for another quick look at the poster. The race was 9 days away, on the 15th of September, and he knew the course well. That's plenty of time to practice, Ollie mumbled to himself. You'll have to practice until you're 50 to beat me, Ollie. Ollie jumped. He looked up into the cold blue eyes of Cooper Tully. Cooper was the same age as Ollie, but a whole head taller. His short blonde hair, spiked up with gel, made him look even bigger. Who says you're going to win? Ollie growled. Oh, come on. I always win. You should know that, said Cooper. The familiar sinking feeling swirled through Ollie. No matter what they competed in, running, football, or even last week's maths test, Cooper always won. But you've already got a video game console, said Ollie. So? I hate sharing it with my little brother, sneered Cooper. I need one in my room. He strutted down the hall like he'd won the race already. Ollie clenched his fists and kicked his backpack. No way! Cooper thinks he's so cool, especially since he won the cross-country race again last month. He just can't win this time. He can't. Ollie swung his pack up on his shoulder and ran off to class. The afternoon dragged by. No matter what Ollie said, Luke refused to talk about the race. Ollie didn't get it. He biked home after school, still trying to work it out. Chapter 2. Luke's Secret. The next day Luke was his old self again, as long as Ollie didn't mention the race. Want to come to my house? Ollie asked as they packed away their homework. Yeah, okay, said Luke. They checked with Luke's mum outside school, then walked to Ollie's place. After a piece of Ollie's mum's chocolate cake and an apple, they played football out in the yard. If we won that race, we could be playing a video game instead, said Ollie. That'd be cool, said Luke, Ollie trapped the ball at his feet. So how come you don't want to be in the race? Just because? What about your new bike? Ollie asked. I just can't, okay? Cried Luke, kicking the ball into the fence. Bang! Ollie stared at his friend, stopped the ball and dribbled it back. Can't what? He asked. I can't ride my new bike, Luke mumbled, looking away. He slouched over to the step, plopped down like a half-empty beanbag and put his head in his hands. What do you mean? Said Ollie. Is it too big or something? Luke shrugged. I dunno. I've tried, but I keep falling off. I crashed into the fence last time. My sister teased me for days. Ollie nodded in sympathy. Try it again, he said. It's easy when you get the hang of it. When I got a bigger bike, it took me a while to get used to it. Luke glanced around. If I tell you a secret, will you promise not to tell anyone? Ollie nodded and moved closer. Luke whispered, It's my first real bike. Really? You know I lived in Sydney before my family moved here, said Luke. Yeah. Well, we always lived in flats and I didn't have a bike. Oh, said Ollie. I wondered why you wouldn't ride it on your birthday. Luke stared at his runners. Now you know, he sighed. There's nowhere to ride one in our new place either. Don't know why Mum and Dad bothered getting me a bike. The gravel on our drive's too deep and the grass in the paddock is too long. Anyway, my sister goes crazy when I go in there. She thinks I'll crash into her horse. What about on the road? Asked Ollie. What? You've seen the way trucks zoom down our road. Okay. Just an idea, said Ollie, holding up his hands. He sat down and told Luke about his run-in with Cooper. He's probably right, said Luke. He's won everything since I've been here. No way, Ollie gritted his teeth. You've seen what he's like. He thinks he's king of the school or something. Cooper's sneering face came back to him, the same look Cooper gave every time he beat him. No, Ollie shook his head. He's not going to win the bike race. Come on, boys, Ollie's mum called. We'll have to get going. I have some things to do after dropping Luke off. At Luke's, while their mums chatted in the driveway, Ollie leaned out of the car window. Come on, Luke. You've got to try your bike again. Honestly, it's easy. You've got all weekend and next week to practice. I bet you'll go really fast when you get the hang of it. Just think of the first prize. Yeah, okay. I'll try it again, Luke said with a grin. Chapter 3. The Race Team. It was Friday and the race was the talk of the school. The bike racks overflowed. Everyone had ridden to school all week, racing each other, trying to get as much practice as possible. Bike helmets littered the cloakrooms, poking out of bags or hung on coat hooks. At playtime, Luke turned to Ollie and said, I've changed my mind. I'm not entering the race. What? I'm not entering it. But you've been practicing lots, said Ollie. The race is tomorrow. You've only got today left to enter. I lied, said Luke, much quieter than before. I'm hopeless. I've tried and tried, but I just keep falling off. Hey, Luke. Ollie and Luke turned to see Cooper at the top of the steps. How come your name's not on the race list? Thought you got a fancy new bike, but I've never seen you on it. Probably can't even ride it. Luke froze, the colour draining from his face. He lives in the country, Cooper. How's he going to ride to school from there? Ollie yelled back when he saw Luke's face. He tugged on Luke's shirt. Come on. They ran off across the playground and in behind the library. Luke still looked worried as they slowed to a walk. Do you think he knew? He asked. Course not, said Ollie, nudging his friend. Just ignore him. Luke shrugged, trying to smile. He glanced back towards the playground and looked thoughtful for a moment. Hey, I know. What if I help you with the race? I can help you get ready at the start and get you a drink and stuff at the end. He grinned. You're fast. I bet you could beat Cooper and win the video game. Yeah, I get it. Ollie nodded slowly. Like our own race team. He held his hand up for a high five. You're on. Chapter 4. Ollie's Idea. Ollie looked out of the window on the day of the race, his face pressed against the glass. The rain poured from a stormy sky. Who would have thought it would be like this with such a nice day yesterday, said his mum. We'll wait to hear if it's cancelled. It would be crazy to ride in this weather. Ollie knew his mum was right. He sat and waited by the phone. When the phone rang and he heard the news, he groaned and slumped down further in his seat. The phone rang again with Luke on the line. Did you hear the news? Yeah, I don't believe it. Ollie walked down to his room with the phone. Now we have to wait another whole week to race. At least you can get some more practice. I don't need more practice. I want to race. But hang on a minute. I can help you practice. I've told you. I'm hopeless, said Luke. Wait, okay. I want to ask Mum something. Stay there. Ollie dropped the phone on his bed. A minute later, he picked it up again. You still there, Luke? Yeah, I'm here. Get your mum. We've got an idea. On Sunday morning, Ollie and his mum went to pick up Luke, his bike, and his sleeping bag. See you tomorrow, Mum, called Luke, waving from Ollie's car. See you after school. He turned and smiled uncertainly at Ollie as they drove off. Ollie gave him a nudge and grinned. I'm glad the weather improved for you boys, said Ollie's mum. We're going to get you riding, Luke. Ollie learned to ride at the park on the long footpaths. I don't think there'll be many people there at this hour of the morning. Chapter 5. Around and around, up and down. When they arrived at the park, Ollie leapt out of the car and began to untie the bikes from the rack. Luke climbed out slowly and gave him a hand. With both bikes down, Ollie passed Luke his helmet. Don't look so worried. It's easy, he said. Now where should you start? Said Ollie's mum, looking around. That park bench will be the best place. Luke looked puzzled, but followed her over to the bench nearby. Lean your bike up against this, then sit on the seat, she said. Luke climbed up. He wiped his hands down the sides of his pants and gave Ollie's mum a panicked look. Now, Luke, she said, I'll hold your bike and help you push off. Don't worry. I won't let you go until you're going fast enough. He pushed off and moved away from the bench slowly. Ollie's mum ran alongside, her hand holding the back of the bike seat as he wobbled up the path. When he straightened up, she let go. Keep pedalling. That's it, she called. Now get off and start again. After stopping and starting for a while with some help, Luke tried riding on his own. The first few times he fell off onto the grass. I can't do it. I can't stay up. You're not going fast enough, Ollie called. Push harder on the pedals." Luke tried again. Staring straight ahead, knuckles white with determination, he pushed off, riding a little faster this time. "Look at me! I'm doing it!" he yelled as he wobbled past Ollie. "Told you. Now you've got to get rid of the wobble." After another hour of practicing, they had juice and sandwiches for lunch. Then they practiced again. They rode up and down while Luke got used to starting and stopping without the park bench. "See, Luke, I told you it's easy when you know how," said Ollie, skidding to a stop beside him. Luke beamed, standing proudly beside his bike. "Now the real test," Ollie grinned. "I'll give you a race." He gave Luke a big head start, then rode off after him. That night, in Ollie's room, Luke yawned in his sleeping bag on the floor, then said, "That was so cool today." Ollie grinned, snuggling down into his bed. "But what about when I get home, Ollie? I still need lots of practice." "Don't worry. Mum's got an idea about that too," Ollie frowned. "But she wouldn't tell me what it was." Chapter 6. Luke's Surprise. First thing on Monday morning, the boys locked their bikes to the school bike racks and ran in to enter Luke in the race. But there was a blank space where the entry form had been pinned to the wall. "Doesn't matter," said Luke. "I'll enter next time." "No way," said Ollie. "You're not chickening out now." He tugged on Luke's shirt, pulling him over to the office window. Mrs. Cook came to the window. "Yes?" she asked. Ollie nodded at Luke. "He'd like to enter the bike race, please." "I'm sorry, boys," she said. "The entry form has already gone to the organisers." "But I thought with the race postponed and everything, he could still enter," said Ollie, giving the best smile he could muster. Mrs. Cook just smiled back, shaking her head. "But he's been practising really hard." "What's the problem, boys?" They turned to see their principal, Miss Banks, behind them. Ollie explained again. "So you see, Miss Banks, Luke's been practising hard and now he wants the race." "Is that so, Luke?" she asked. Ollie elbowed Luke. "Yes, Miss Banks," mumbled Luke. Miss Banks smiled. "Since you've made all this effort and you're just bursting to be part of the school activities, I'll let you make a late entry. Luckily, I'm one of the organisers." Ollie couldn't help grinning as Luke wrote down his name for the principal. Cooper came to find Luke on the football oval at lunchtime. "I saw you at the office this morning. How come you've entered all of a sudden?" he said. "Same as everyone else. Just to beat you." Luke laughed and skillfully stopped mid-run, spun around and passed the ball to Ollie across the oval. Cooper was left standing, glaring after them. After school, as Luke's mum put his bike in the boot of their car, Ollie nudged his friend. "You've got to try and practice. I know it's tricky with the horse and everything, but it'll be worth it." "Yeah, I'll try," said Luke, his enthusiasm starting to fade. "Just wait and see, Luke," his mum said with a smile. "Dad has a surprise for you." They drove away, Luke looking puzzled. That night, Ollie's phone rang. "Guess what, Ollie? I've got my own practice strip. You should see it." "Dad has mowed a path right through the horse paddock," said Luke. "But what about the—" "My sister's furious. Dad's made obstacles for me to ride around. I practiced until it was dark. No wobbles now." "First prize? Here we come," yelled Ollie. "Yahoo! See ya!" He hung up and ran down the hall, skidding into the kitchen. "Guess what, Mum?" His mum carried on peeling potatoes with a knowing smile on her face. By Friday, the buzz in the playground had reached fever pitch once more. "It's tomorrow. I can't wait," Ollie said in between mouthfuls of banana. "I wish it was next Saturday," said Luke with a shrug. "Then I could get more practice in." "You'll be right. You're really good now. Just think of what's up for grabs," said Ollie. "How many chances do you get at winning a video game console?" "Just finishing the race without embarrassing myself would be good," mumbled Luke. Chapter 7. Race Day. Saturday morning was clear and sunny, perfect for a bike race. Ollie and his parents met Luke and his family at the Freshway supermarket car park. They checked in with the race desk and got their shirt numbers, free water bottles and sunscreen. "Wow," said Ollie's mum, pinning his number to the back of his shirt. "It's all very official, isn't it?" The race was to start in an hour. The next job was to go over their bikes. Tyres were checked, brakes tested again, and seats adjusted. They were ready. "Come on, boys." Ollie's mum made them do 20 star jumps and jog on the spot while they waited. "Oh, Mum, everyone's watching," moaned Ollie. "They'll watch you win too," she said. "You have to warm up your muscles before a big race." Just then the last person Ollie wanted to see strolled over and leaned against the pole. "What are you two doing?" Cooper snickered. "You look like you've got ants in your pants." Ollie and Luke stopped their star jumps and turned back to their bikes. "You're wasting your time," said Cooper. "I'll warm you up when I burn past. To show you what a good sport I am, I'll even save you a cold drink at the finish line." "Not." Luke made a face at Cooper's back as he strutted further along the footpath to another cyclist. "What do you call that?" sneered Cooper. "A bike? Ha! Did you borrow it from your grandma?" The boy looked at the ground, his face flushing pink. Cooper laughed again and ambled off to check out the rest of the competition. Fuming, Ollie spun back to his bike. He snatched his helmet from his handlebars and jammed it on his head. A voice boomed from a loudspeaker. "All cyclists are to be at the start line in 10 minutes. Ollie turned to Luke. "This is it. Let's do it." "Yeah," said Luke. "I'll be back in a sec," and ran off towards the bathrooms. Looking a little pale, he reappeared and grabbed his bike. They lined up with 63 other cyclists, all determined to win. "Attention riders," the loudspeaker boomed. "The streets of the course have been closed, so there will be no traffic. Follow the red arrows to the corners marked with flags. Then you'll stay on track. Are you ready, everyone?" The riders gripped their handlebars, leaning forward, feet poised on the pedals. "On your marks, get set. Honk!" sounded the air horn. They were off. Chapter 8. The Chase. Ollie had a good start and was clear of the line quickly. He glanced back to see a few bikes get caught up together and hoped Luke had taken off okay. Yes, there he is, he thought. Luke was a bit wobbly, but he was clear of the tangled bikes. Cooper whizzed past him, streaking towards the first corner. "Oh no," Ollie groaned. He gritted his teeth, tucked his head down, and chased after Cooper with a group of other cyclists. They rode around the corner in a pack. He heard people calling out, cheering kids on. "Come on, Scott! Go, Andy!" Ollie was getting a good rhythm now. His legs pumped up and down smoothly as he moved steadily through his group. But where was Luke? With his group of riders so close together, he didn't dare look back. He didn't want to touch another bike and go down. Ollie could see Cooper up ahead in another group. They had reached the second corner of the course already. A crowd of parents and kids hung over the barrier on that corner too. Go, 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 they urged. It spurred Ollie on. Around the corner he went and onto the longest part of the course. He had ridden along it hundreds of times before, but today was different. Ollie looked up again. Cooper seemed miles away. Hold on. What was going on? Some of the riders in Cooper's group were slowing down. They were getting off their bikes and looking at their back wheels. What were they doing? Only Cooper had kept going. As Ollie's group got closer, the riders who'd stopped waved and started shouting, "Watch out! There are drawing pins all over the road. Cooper must have dropped them," another yelled. A loud hissing noise came from the tyres of two riders in Ollie's bunch. Chapter 9. Huff and Puff. Ollie swung out into the centre of the road, avoiding any pins that were left. Now that he wasn't so boxed in with other riders, he looked back for Luke. Where was he? He turned back to focus on Cooper. "I'm coming, Cooper," he thought. "You got some riders, but you didn't get me." He tucked his head lower. He pumped his pedals harder. Taking slow, deep breaths to avoid getting a cramp, he crept up on Cooper. Soon he sat right behind Cooper's rear wheel. Bit by bit he edged forward until he could hear Cooper's heavy breathing. "Hey, Huff and Puff," said Ollie, pulling up beside Cooper. "What? How did you—" Cooper swerved in surprise. Ollie laughed at the look on Cooper's face, but Cooper recovered quickly and swung back in next to him. "The prize is mine," he growled. "We'll see," said Ollie with a smile, edging forward past Cooper's front wheel. Suddenly Cooper rode even closer. He kicked out at Ollie's bike. "Hey, cut it out!" yelled Ollie, swerving dangerously close to the curb. Cooper kicked out again, this time striking Ollie's crossbar. Ollie wobbled wildly, trying to keep his balance. "Bye, loser," snickered Cooper, racing ahead again. Ollie slowed for a few seconds, his heart hammering in his chest. With a deep breath, he bent over his handlebars and chased after Cooper. By the end of the long straight, Ollie was only 20 metres behind. His tyres hummed on the road. The wind raced over his helmet and down his neck, cooling his skin. All of a sudden, Cooper cut across the road behind a line of parked cars and shot into the park. He'd cut the whole corner. Ollie looked up ahead. The spectators down on the corner were trying to get a dog off the road and hadn't seen Cooper go. Ollie concentrated on reaching the corner, pumping his legs like a machine. He rode around the corner, liquid smooth, the spectators a blur. He glanced across the road to the park. He couldn't believe it. First the drawing pins, then Cooper nearly knocking him off his bike. Now this. Where was he? There, on the main path through the park. The same footpath Luke had learned to ride on. Cooper turned his head for a moment, saw Ollie watching him, then hunched down further over his bike. They rode parallel for a while, glancing at each other between the trees and parked cars. A large truck blocked Ollie's view of the park for a second. When he'd passed it, Cooper was gone. Ollie scanned the path further up the park. No Cooper. Surely he couldn't be that fast. He looked back. He wobbled, nearly losing his balance again. Cooper's bike lay in a heap next to a park bench. Cooper lay on the grass next to it. Chapter 10. Spaghetti. Oh no, thought Ollie. His mind spun. Cooper must have crashed into the park bench when he was watching me. Frowning, he glanced back over his shoulder. Another group of riders was gaining on him. He took one last look back at Cooper. He's probably trying to straighten his bike out. But Cooper hadn't moved. Ollie pedalled on. He'll be all right, he thought. He'll get up. But Ollie had lost his rhythm. The bunch behind him was still gaining. He looked back at the park, but now trees and bushes blocked his view of Cooper. He kept pedalling. An awful feeling gnawed deep inside him. Was Cooper all right? Should he go back? Should he? Ollie gritted his teeth. Cooper shouldn't have cheated, or tried to kick me off, or dropped drawing pins on the road. But, he looked back again, is he all right? He skidded to a stop at the next bunch of spectators. Someone's hurt. Cooper has fallen off. He didn't get up. Where, son? Where? Said a man wearing a race shirt. In the park. Back there. Ollie pointed to the park and noticed the group of riders was even closer. What's he doing in the park? Said the man spinning around. OK, you better get going, son, if you're going to stay in front. Again, Ollie turned to see the fast-approaching riders. I'll find... Cooper, is it? Asked the man. Where did you say? Ollie knew it was no good. His race was over. It's okay, said Ollie, climbing off his bike. I'll show you. He groaned as the group of riders flew past him. Luke was at the back. He stopped pedalling for a moment when he saw Ollie. Keep going, Luke. I'm all right. Keep going. Ollie waved him on. Luke put his head down and chased after the other riders. When Ollie and the race official reached Cooper, they found an elderly lady standing over him. Her poodle yapped at Cooper's still body. The front wheel of Cooper's bike looked like a tangle of spaghetti wrapped around the end of the park bench. Cooper's face was as pale as the footpath. His helmet had a crack across the front. As the race official leaned over him, he groaned and moved a little. By the time the ambulance arrived and the bent bike had been loaded onto a spectator's truck, Cooper had woken up. He wasn't sure where he was, but the paramedic told Ollie he'd be fine. Ollie went back to school in the truck, his bike in the back with Cooper's. Chapter 11. The Finish Line. The finish line banner fluttered in the breeze above Ollie as he climbed out of the truck at school. Some finish, he thought. Once he had parked his bike in the competition bike racks, he looked around. The car park was full of cyclists, bikes and spectators. Ollie! Ollie! He turned to see Luke waving at him from across the car park. He waved back and waited while Luke dodged his way through the crowd. We've been waiting for you. We must have missed you at the finish line. What happened? Asked Luke. Ollie told Luke about Cooper. So I didn't even finish the race, he said. I got a ride back with Cameron's dad. Luke shook his head. That big cheater, he said, frowning. An ambulance and everything, really? Then he whispered, Is he going to be okay? Yeah, I think so, said Ollie, but it was a bit scary when he didn't get up. There you are, Ollie's mum rushed up. Are you all right? We were worried when we didn't see. Suddenly a loudspeaker blasted, making everyone jump. Attention everyone! All riders have now completed the race, blared Miss Banks. Well done. First, I'd like to thank all the parents and teachers who helped make this event possible. It's been a great day, apart from a few mishaps along the way. People looked puzzled and murmured among themselves about what she could mean. Ollie rolled his eyes at Luke. The time has come to announce our winners, said the principal, shaking open a piece of paper. Could they please come up on the stage as I read out their names? 4th place, Luke Baines. Ollie's mouth dropped open and Luke gave him a huge grin. I didn't get a chance to tell you, he said. He raced up on stage. Miss Banks shook his hand and passed him an envelope. Luke has won a voucher to the new Sky High Adventure Complex for himself and a friend. Ollie squeezed through to the front of the crowd, cheering and whistling for Luke. Luke beamed while the third and second place winners received their prizes. And first prize goes to Michael Baxter, who rode an excellent race. Michael was in their class, and Ollie cheered with the rest of the crowd as Michael received his prize. Chapter 12. The Truth About Cooper. Just as the prize winners were going to leave the stage, Miss Banks gestured for them to stay. There is one other prize I wish to award. One student gave up his chance to win the race. He was well in front, but stopped to tell the race officials of another cyclist's accident. Because of his actions, the injured boy is now recovering in the hospital. The people in the crowd looked around at each other. Ollie looked at his feet, suddenly wishing he was at the back. "Ollie Locke, please come up," Miss Banks said with a smile. Ollie heard his mum gasp. Miss Banks held out her hand to Ollie when he made it up on stage. "I've been told that Ollie also helped one of our winners to train for the race." Luke grinned. "The sponsor has donated an extra prize for Ollie," announced the principal, "of 1 month's free rental of a video game console and several games of his choice." "Yes!" Ollie swung around to give Luke a high five. When the other prize winners left the stage to a huge cheer, Miss Banks touched Ollie's shoulder. "Thank you, Ollie. I've been watching Cooper Tully's winning streak for some time. Things just didn't add up. His actions today have proved my suspicions." Ollie couldn't help grinning as he leapt down the stage steps. "What was that all about?" asked Luke. "You're not going to believe this. Cooper has been cheating, not just the bike race, but everything." Ollie laughed. "Things might be a bit different from now on." "Ollie, Luke, we're so proud of you," interrupted their parents, sweeping them each up in huge hugs. When they finally wriggled away, Ollie and Luke grinned at each other. Ollie leaned closer and whispered, "Told you it was easy." Luke just shrugged and grinned. Make a newspaper. Make your own picture. Click on Help to watch a demonstration. Complete your ID by typing in your name. Click Next when you have finished. Set a date. Choose the month. Choose the day. Great, that's today's date. Type in a name for your newspaper. Click on a headline for your story. Race has students pedaling. Type your story. Drag a picture for your story onto the newspaper front page. Click Next when you've finished. Write a caption or label for the picture. Check your newspaper carefully. If you want to make any changes, click on the Revise button beside the part you want to change.
Otherwise, click on Publish to make your newspaper. You can print your newspaper or play again.
Story Toolbox. Type your name and click Next. Create a new story. Have fun clicking on the buttons. Then drag items onto the board to make a picture. Type or write your story underneath the picture. Click Next to make another page or click Finish to view your story. Fantastic work! Click Save to save your story, click Print to print your story, or click Start Again to make another story.